Oh, I am doing wonderful.
I'm concerned about
Anything that's not done while we're setting, knots can get retied, a hole can be fixed.
Captain Rick Shelford has fished the Bering Sea for over 30 years. He has hauled over 100 million pounds of seafood on his vessel. He built one of the most recognizable boats in Deadliest Catch history. And right now, none of that matters, because a 25-year-old father of 3 fell off his boat and did not survive. A federal investigation has his name in it, and the future of everything he has built is in the hands of people who answer to no one in the fishing industry. The last day Todd Meadows ever went to work. There are places on this earth where nature does not care who you are, how young you are, or how much you have to live for. The Bering Sea is one of those places. It sits above Alaska like a cold, restless giant. And every single person who has ever worked on those waters knows that it can take your life without warning and without apology. On February 25, 2026, it took Todd Meadows. Todd Morgan Meadows was 25 years old. He was from Montesano, Washington, a small town nestled in the foggy timber country of the Pacific Northwest. He had grown up around fishing his entire life. His father, Lucas Meadows, did not take Todd to Little League or soccer practice on weekends. He took him fishing. Todd was roughly 3 years old the first time he stood on a boat with his dad, and from that moment forward, the water was not just a hobby for him, it was a calling. By the time Todd was old enough to work professionally, he had already spent years on a charter fishing boat in northern Washington state. He was not some wide-eyed kid who stumbled into commercial crabbing because he saw it on television and thought it looked exciting. He was a serious young fisherman who had put in real hours, in real conditions, doing real work. That kind of background mattered to a crew like the one aboard the Aleutian Lady, and it is exactly what got him connected to the vessel through a mutual friend in the spring of 2025. Todd joined the Aleutian Lady in May of 2025. He was the newest member of the crew, and he was there to film what would have been his first season on Discovery Channel's long-running reality show, Deadliest Catch, Season 22, his debut, the beginning of what his mother, Angela, believed would be a long and successful career on the water.
Todd Meadows, one of the stars of the hit fishing reality show Deadliest Catch, has died. He was 25. The tragic details surrounding the death have been revealed.
Angela Meadows spoke to reporters after her son's death, and the things she said about him paint a picture of a young man who was driven and focused in a way that most people twice his age never managed to be. She said that when Todd set his mind to something, he simply did not give up. She said he was not out there to make friends or to become a television personality. He was out there to work and to do what he loved. He dreamed of one day owning his own boat and becoming a captain himself. He wanted to build something. He wanted his sons to be proud of him. Those 3 sons are the part of this story that stops you cold. 3 little boys. Their mother, Kennedy Harvey, grew up with Todd in Aberdeen, Washington, and she described him as not just the father of her children, but her best friend. On the evening of February 25, 2026, at approximately 5 o'clock in the afternoon, local Alaska time, everything those boys were going to have with their father came to an end. The Aleutian Lady was approximately 170 miles north of Dutch Harbor, deep in the Bering Sea, when Todd Meadows went overboard. The Coast Guard received the emergency notification from the vessel within minutes. The crew did not freeze, they acted. They recovered Todd from the water in roughly 10 minutes, which in those temperatures is the difference between a rescue and a recovery. The water in the Bering Sea in February is barely above freezing. A human body begins to lose motor function within minutes of immersion. The crew got him back on deck as fast as they could. It was not fast enough. Todd was unresponsive when they pulled him out of the water. The crew attempted first aid and CPR. They did everything they could. Nothing worked. The Aleutian Lady turned back toward Dutch Harbor and made the long, silent journey in with the body of a 25-year-old man who had gone to sea to build a future for his kids. The United States Coast Guard confirmed his death and opened a formal investigation. At the time this script was written, the exact cause of his fall had not been made public. What caused him to go over the rail, whether there were warning signs, Whether anything could have been done differently, none of those questions had been officially answered. And that silence is exactly where this story gets complicated, because Todd Meadows did not die on just any boat. He died on a boat with a history. The investigation is open. The answers have not come. And back on shore, 3 little boys are waiting for a father who is never coming home. To understand why Todd Meadows' death matters beyond the personal tragedy it already is, you have to understand the boat he was on, and you have to understand the man in charge of it. Who is Captain Rick Shelford, and why does his past matter right now? Captain Richard Shelford was born on February 25th. That date is not a coincidence you can ignore. February 25th, 2026, the day Todd Meadows died, was also Rick Shelford's 48th birthday. If you are looking for a detail that captures the brutal, indifferent nature of what happened on that boat, that is it. The captain's birthday became the worst day of his professional life. Rick Shelford is not a newcomer to commercial fishing. He is about as deep-rooted in the industry as a person can be. His grandfather, Soren Sorensen, was a Norwegian immigrant who came to Alaska and became a pioneer in Alaskan fishing. His father, Rick Shelford Sr., built on that legacy by founding Shelford Fisheries in 1995 and purchasing the Aleutian Lady in the late 1980s.
Rick Shelford, SR, is not only the president, but also the owner of Shelford Fisheries, a company he established back in 1995. They acquired the F/V Polar Lady, F/V Aleutian Lady.
Rick Jr. started fishing aboard that same vessel at 15 years old. By 1997, he was a working greenhorn. He moved up through every role on the boat, from deckhand to engineer to captain, and by 2012, he was the fleet manager of Shelford Fisheries, overseeing 4 vessels. He returned to active fishing around 2019, and the results were hard to argue with. In 2019, he hauled 10 pots averaging 1,000 crabs each. In 2020, he caught 106,200 pounds of red king crab in just 5 days. By 2023, the Aleutian Lady had crossed 100 million pounds of lifetime seafood harvested. These are not small numbers. This is a man who knows how to catch crabs. But here is the thing about Rick Shelford that his resume does not show. His debut on Deadliest Catch in Season 19 came with a co-captain arrangement that fell apart publicly and painfully, and the footage of that collapse has never been more relevant than it is right now. When Meadows went overboard, the Aleutian Lady was the last Season 22 vessel still at sea. Production on the entire season ended that day. The investigation is underway, and the questions that viewers and critics are now asking did not start in February 2026. They started 2 years earlier on camera from another captain who looked at the Aleutian Lady's operation and said something was wrong. The warning that was caught on camera and then ignored. Season 19 of Deadliest Catch introduced Captain Rick Shelford and the Aleutian Lady to a national audience, but it also introduced something else entirely. It introduced a moment of tension so specific and so prescient that in the wake of Todd Meadows' death, it has become impossible to watch without feeling deeply unsettled. Captain Sean Dwyer, formerly of the F/V Brenna A, was brought aboard the Aleutian Lady in Season 19 as a co-captain. The idea was that 2 captains working together might be more effective in a competitive season. What actually happened was that Dwyer, within a short time of being aboard and observing operations, became genuinely concerned about what he was seeing. He said it on camera. He did not whisper it or hint at it or leave it open to interpretation. He said it plainly. He described the pre-departure situation as feeling like chaos. He said he did not feel like it was a good idea to take off. He said he felt that corners were being cut and that he was concerned. These were not the words of a man looking for drama. These were the words of a licensed captain doing a professional risk assessment and arriving at a conclusion that scared him. Rick Shelford's response was equally direct. He stated there was no safety issue at all. Dwyer left the Aleutian Lady before it ever left port. He subsequently left the show entirely. At the time, some viewers and fans chalked this up to a personality conflict, to 2 captains with different styles who simply could not work together. Dwyer was seen by some as overly cautious. Shelford was seen as confident and decisive. The boat went out, caught crab, made good television, and the concerns Dwyer raised were mostly forgotten. They are not forgotten now. In the days and weeks following Todd Meadows' death, people who remembered those season 19 scenes went back and watched them again. And what had once looked like a clash of personalities now looked like something else. It looked like a warning, a specific, documented, on-camera warning from a professional mariner who walked away from that vessel rather than take it to sea. This does not mean Rick Shelford is legally responsible for Todd's death. The Coast Guard investigation will determine what the facts are, and those facts have not been fully disclosed. But it does mean that when the public looks at this situation, they are not seeing an isolated tragedy on a vessel with a clean record and no prior concerns. They are seeing a tragedy on a vessel where concerns were raised, dismissed, and filmed for television 2 seasons ago. That context does not go away. And for Rick Shelford, it is now part of every conversation about what happened on February 25th, 2026. On March 2nd, 2026, Captain Rick Shelford sat down and wrote something that he posted to his Facebook page. It was not a legal statement. It was not a carefully worded press release crafted by a publicist or a network executive. It was a personal message from a man who had just gone through the worst week of his professional life, and the weight of it came through in every sentence. The moment Rick Shelford spoke up. Rick wrote that February 25th, 2026 was the most tragic day in the history of the Aleutian Lady on the Bering Sea. He wrote that they had lost their brother, Todd Meadows. He described Todd as the newest member of the crew who had quickly become family. He said Todd's love for fishing and his strong work ethic had earned everyone's respect right away. He wrote about Todd's smile and about the sound of his laughter coming up the wheelhouse stairs and over the deck hailer, and he said that sound was something the crew would carry with them always.
New details on the death of the newest deckhand on Deadliest Catch have been released to the public. In a statement to the press, the Coast Guard says they were alerted to a crew member falling overboard on the Aleutian Lady on February 25th.
He ended the tribute with the words, "Rest easy, brother, till we meet again." That post mattered for several reasons. First, it was the moment the world outside of Dutch Harbor officially learned what had happened aboard the Aleutian Lady. Shelford posted it before the major news networks had run the story. Before TMZ, before NBC, before Deadline, before any of the headlines that would follow in the next 48 hours, Rick Shelford told the story himself on social media. Second, the post reveals something important about the psychological position Shelford now occupies. He is simultaneously the person who lost a crewman and the person responsible for the vessel that crewman was on. He is grieving and he is under scrutiny at the same time. That is an almost unbearable combination of pressures for any person to carry. And it is made significantly heavier by the fact that the Coast Guard investigation means he cannot simply mourn in private. Every statement he makes, every interview he gives or declines to give, exists within the context of a formal inquiry into what happened on his watch. Kennedy Harvey, the mother of Todd's children, responded to Shelford's tribute. She thanked him. She wrote that Todd absolutely loved the brotherhood of fishing and that she would never let his children forget him. That response from the mother of his lost crew member's children is significant. It suggests that whatever anger and grief existed in that immediate aftermath, there was no open accusation directed at Shelford from the family, at least not publicly, and at least not yet. But private grief and public accountability are two different things. The family's dignified response does not resolve the questions that investigators and the broader public are asking. It simply confirms that the people most directly affected by this loss are focused on surviving it rather than assigning blame in the immediate hours after losing someone they loved. Shelford's tribute also introduced a detail that changed how many people thought about Todd Meadows, the person, rather than Todd Meadows, the news story. He described the sound of Todd's laughter coming up the wheelhouse stairs. That is not a detail you invent or embellish. That is the memory of a real person who moved through a real space and left an impression on the people around him. It is a detail that makes Todd real in a way that news reports sometimes fail to do. And it is the kind of detail that Rick Shelford will now carry for the rest of his life. Whatever the investigation finds, that laughter on the stairs is not something he gets to unhear. The family left behind, and the community that rallied around 3 little boys. Montesano, Washington, is the kind of place where people know each other. It sits in Grays Harbor County, surrounded by forest and farmland. And it is the kind of small town where a young man's death on a crab boat in Alaska is not just a news story. It travels through families and friend groups and workplaces the way loss does in tight communities, person to person, until everyone is connected to the grief somehow. Todd Meadows left behind 3 young sons. Their ages have not been widely reported out of respect for the family's privacy, but the reality of 3 small children growing up without their father is the detail that turns this story from a fishing industry tragedy into something that reaches people who have never watched a single episode of Deadliest Catch in their lives. Kennedy Harvey, the mother of those boys, wrote her tribute to Todd the day after his death. She said she did not have words. She said that nothing she could do or say would bring him back. She said that at least he had passed doing what he loved, and she held on to that as something that brought her a little bit of comfort. She promised to never let the boys forget him. That promise, made publicly on the day after losing her best friend and the father of her children, is the emotional center of this entire story. Everything else, the investigation, the television show, the Coast Guard inquiry, the debates about safety protocols, all of it spins around that one promise made by a woman in Montesano, Washington, who now has to raise 3 boys alone and make sure they grow up knowing who their father was. Todd's parents, Lucas and Angela Meadows, also spoke publicly. Lucas talked about teaching Todd to fish when he was barely old enough to walk. Angela talked about his drive and his ambition, and his refusal to quit when he committed to something. His sister Roslyn and his grandmother Connie Lambert also mourned publicly, turning their private pain into something the rest of the country could witness and share. The GoFundMe campaign launched by Paige Knutson from Elma, Washington, moved fast. Within the first few days after the story broke nationally, nearly 500 donors had contributed approximately $29,000 to $30,000. The campaign described Todd exactly as the people who loved him described him: a beloved 25-year-old father, son, brother, and friend, who left far too soon while doing what he loved. The funds were directed toward supporting his 3 sons, covering funeral expenses, and easing the immediate financial pressure on the family. $30,000 raised in days from strangers is not a small thing. It is a community, expanded by the reach of social media and the visibility of a television show, saying collectively that this family will not be left completely alone in the worst moment of their lives. But money raised on GoFundMe does not fill a seat at a birthday party. It does not sit in the bleachers at a school play. It does not teach a boy how to tie a fishing knot the way a father can. The community response has been generous and real, and it is still only a partial answer to a loss that has no complete answer. Todd's mother said he dreamed of owning his own boat someday. His sons will grow up knowing that their father died pursuing that dream on the water he loved, doing the work he chose. Whether that knowledge brings them comfort or grief or both in different seasons of their lives is something only time will reveal. For now, the United States Coast Guard does not open investigations as a formality. When a crew member dies aboard a commercial fishing vessel under the Coast Guard's jurisdiction, a marine casualty investigation is mandatory. Let's tell you what is revealed. The Coast Guard investigation and what it could mean for Rick Shelford's future. The investigation into Todd Meadows' death is being handled by the Arctic District, which is headquartered in Juneau, Alaska, and oversees maritime operations across one of the harshest and most remote regions on the planet. Chief Petty Officer Travis McGee confirmed the investigation publicly in the days following Todd's death. Beyond that, the Coast Guard has said very little. What the investigation will look at is extensive. Investigators will examine the physical condition of the vessel, the safety equipment aboard, whether proper procedures were being followed at the time of the incident, the crew's training and certification records, the weather and sea conditions at the time Todd went overboard, and the exact sequence of events leading up to his fall. They will interview the surviving crew members. They will review the vessel's logs. They will look at everything. The outcomes of a Coast Guard investigation can range widely. At one end of the spectrum, an investigation can determine that an incident was a tragic accident with no contributing negligence or violations and no formal action results. At the other end, the investigation can identify specific violations of maritime safety regulations that lead to civil penalties, license suspensions, or, in the most serious cases, criminal referrals. For Rick Shelford, the stakes could not be higher. His USCG captain's license is the foundation of his entire livelihood and identity. Without it, he cannot legally command any of the vessels in the Shelford Fisheries fleet. He cannot run the Aleutian Lady or the newly acquired F5 Bountiful or any of the other vessels under the company's management. His career, his family's multi-generational business, and his public identity as a fifth-generation Alaskan fisherman all rest on what that investigation finds. The shadow of the Sean Dwyer situation adds another layer of complexity to this. During a Coast Guard investigation, investigators have the ability to review publicly available information, including documentary footage. Whether footage from Season 19 that captured Dwyer's safety concerns becomes part of the investigative record is not something that has been publicly confirmed. But the existence of that footage, and the fact that it documents a licensed captain raising specific concerns about readiness aboard the Aleutian Lady before a departure, is the kind of material that does not simply vanish because the cameras have moved on. There is also the question of what the Discovery Channel and the production company, Original Productions, through Warner Brothers Discovery, decide to do with Season 22. The season was effectively cut short by Todd's death. Production concluded when the Aleutian Lady returned to Dutch Harbor. What footage exists from the season, whether it will ever air, and in what form, are decisions that will be made in the coming months by network executives who are weighing grief against business reality. The Aleutian Lady has crossed 100 million pounds of seafood harvested in her lifetime. She has been a working vessel through hurricanes, ice storms, equipment failures, and everything the Bering Sea has thrown at her for decades. Whether she goes back out for a 23rd season of Deadliest Catch depends on decisions that are currently out of Rick Shelford's control entirely. What is in his control is how he moves through the investigation, whether he cooperates fully, whether he speaks publicly before it concludes, and whether new information emerges that changes the public's understanding of what happened on February 25th will all shape how this story ends for him professionally. The bigger picture that nobody in reality television wants to talk about.
The Bering Sea is widely known as one of the most dangerous bodies of water in the world, with volatile weather, shallow depths, and brutally cold temperatures. It's the very reason Deadliest Catch earned its name.
There is a conversation happening underneath all of the grief and all of the investigation updates and all of the tribute posts that nobody in the Deadliest Catch ecosystem is rushing to have out loud. It is the conversation about what reality television does to the men and women whose real lives it turns into entertainment. Todd Meadows' own parents gave a glimpse of it when they described his frustration with the filming process. He was irritated by having to stop work and re-film moments for the cameras. He was there to fish. He was there to work. He was not there to perform for an audience. But the moment he stepped onto a Deadliest Catch vessel, his work became a performance whether he wanted it to be or not, and the demands of production became part of the environment he was working in. Commercial fishing is already among the most dangerous occupations in the United States. The death rate in the fishing industry is roughly 29 times the national average for all workers. People die on crab boats in the Bering Sea with no cameras present, and those deaths get a local news segment and maybe a memorial service before the industry moves on. What Deadliest Catch does is amplify the drama of that danger into a television product that generates enormous advertising revenue and viewer loyalty while the actual workers absorb the actual risk. This is not a new criticism of the show. It has existed since the early seasons, but it lands differently when a 25-year-old man falls into the Bering Sea during a season 22 filming operation and does not come home. The show has lost people before. Captain Phil Harris of the FV Cornelia Marie died in 2010. Todd Kochutin died in 2021. Nick Mavar, the longest-running regular cast member, died suddenly in June 2024. Each loss prompted a wave of grief and tributes and thoughtful social media posts, and then production continued. The question that sits uncomfortably at the center of all of this is whether the existence of cameras and production crews and the pressure to generate compelling footage changes the decision-making environment aboard these vessels in ways that increase risk. Does a captain push out into conditions he might otherwise hold back in because the production schedule has a deadline? Does a crew member take a position on deck that he would not otherwise take because a camera operator needs a specific shot? Does the entertainment apparatus that surrounds the fishing operation subtly, or not so subtly, reshape the choices that people make? These are not accusations, they are questions, and they deserve honest engagement from everyone who profits from turning commercial fishing into primetime television. Todd Meadows dreamed of being a captain. He wanted to own his own boat. He got onto Deadliest Catch because it represented opportunity, visibility, and connection to an industry he had loved since he was 3 years old. He was not naive about the danger. Nobody who fishes the Bering Sea in February is naive about the danger. But he was 25 years old, and his sons needed a father, and a television show that calls itself Deadliest Catch perhaps owes its audience a more honest accounting of what that title actually costs. Rick Shelford is going to face the Coast Guard investigation. He's going to carry the weight of being the captain on duty when a young father of 3 fell into the Bering Sea and did not survive. He is going to walk back out onto that wheelhouse, or maybe he will not. And everything that follows for him professionally will be shaped by what the investigation finds and by how the public processes what they know. But the bigger accountability question is not just about one captain or one vessel or one season of television. It is about an entire industry, both the fishing industry and the entertainment industry, that has built a profitable and beloved franchise on the real and documented danger that real people face every single day for real wages and real consequences. Todd Meadows is gone. His 3 sons are growing up without him. His mother is keeping a promise she made to herself that she would not let them forget who their father was. And somewhere in the Arctic, a Coast Guard investigation is working through evidence looking for answers that will matter enormously for the living, and that will arrive too late to do anything at all for the dead. If you have thoughts on what should happen next, whether that is about the Coast Guard investigation, the future of Deadliest Catch, or the safety of the crew members who risk their lives every season, drop them in the comments below, because this is exactly the kind of conversation that needs more voices than just one.